Hello, welcome to this video. Nice to see you all. I hope you're all good and happy. This is going to be a lot of talking because I want to have a chat. Because I have maligned American bands a little bit, especially American progressive rock bands. Now this comes out of a sense of national pride for my country. And we're not great at the moment, are we? Let's be honest, the United Kingdom is not great at the moment. And so to make up, I will champion, our progressive rock bands, Yes, Genesis, King Crimson, just to name a few. When you put them against American, by American, I mean the United States of America, because Rush are a great band, but taking Rush out of it, what you got? Kansas Sticks. And they're both rubbish. Sorry. But this goes wider than that. When I used to teach, I used to go, right, let's name some bands, as opposed to artists. Like kids now, they think of us in terms of artists. In fact, bands don't really exist anymore, do they? There's no bands. If they're a band, it's just the name of some people. It's not a band. It's not guitar, bass, drums, keyboards, or whatever. So I'd say, who are the greatest bands? And they would go, I don't know, Led Zeppelin, right, Led Zeppelin on board, Black Sabbath, right on the board, Beatles, right on the board, AC/DC, right in on the board, Rolling Stones, right in on the board, Metallica, right in on the board, who else? And these are the really massive bands, Radiohead, someone might say, Coldplay, whatever it is. You're writing all these bands on the board, right? And I promise you, the only one that used to always come up was Metallica. Metallica seemed to be the only band whose stature seems to be equal to the other bands I've said. But as soon as you say that, you go, yeah, but Metallica are from the 1980s, right? Which automatically demotes them in a way. If I had two bands in the room now, if I got Black Sabbath over here and I'd got Metallica over there, who's top dog out of those two? It's bloody Black Sabbath, isn't it? It's Black Sabbath, right? So the truth is, I cannot work out who is the greatest American rock band of all time. And I'm talking rock bands, not some weird, not R.E.M., not bloody Talking Heads. None of those sort of wimpy, not quite a rock band bands, not Blondie, none of that. Take on the Cars. I don't want to know about all that rubbish. Right, I don't want to know about that. We're talking about the 60s, 70s, classic era of rock, hard rock, or whatever you want to call it. We used to call it heavy rock in the old days, or even heavy metal we used to call it. I know you can't call it that now. You know the sort of band I mean, one with guitars, bass and drums. The guitars have got dirty, and it's a rock band. That's what I want, singing songs about girls and stuff like that. I want a rock band, right? Because I'm afraid, Americans, and this is directed at you now, you don't seem to have the bands as good as us, do you? You just don't. Even in the rock bands. You haven't got a Led Zeppelin. You haven't got a Black Sabbath. You haven't got a Rolling Stones even. I mean, what's your version of the Rolling Stones? Bloody Aerosmith. It's like 10 years after the Rolling Stones have done their thing, and then they come out doing their thing. They make about 3 okay albums in the 70s that everyone has to say they're genius albums, and they're not. I've listened to them. Right? So Aerosmith, and then they go away, and then they get some songwriters and join this bloody like late 80s pop, Permanent Vacation. I love that album. I love Rocks, and I love Get Your Wings and Toys of the Attic. They are great. Sweet Emotion is one of the greatest rock songs of all time. If all their songs were like that, I would love Aerosmith, but they're not, are they? They're derivative post-Rolling Stones rock. It's just not Led Zeppelin. It's not Deep Purple. Right? It's not the Kinks. It's not the Who. Right? It's not Cream. Is it? It's not the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Oh, Andy, he's American. Yeah, Jimi Hendrix. Let's just put him in his own thing. Jimi Hendrix is the greatest rock musician of all time. That we all know that, and he was American, right? And in there is a little bit of truth that we can work on. But let's put Jimmy over the side in this conversation, trying to work out who actually is the greatest American rock band. I'm not going to be here putting them down, but what I want to know is that taking away all our brilliant bands here in the UK, let's just take them away. The small faces, just take them away. We've got so many of these these brilliant bands, what are you left with? Right, so let's have a go at this, shall we? Right, so let's start, right? You guys, Americans, you do have one band that nobody really mentions that much, but seems to be, for me, the Little Seed and Genesis. And there is a band called The Seeds, and there's a band called Genesis, but it's not either of those. Although The Seeds, I could do a little video on them. But I'm talking about the Sonics, 1965. Sonics make an album in 1965, which really nails and explores the dirtiness of rock, the heaviness that's going to emerge in popular music at that point. And they're before anybody. They're before Cream, they're before Hendrix, they're before the Beatles. The Stones did do I Can't Get No Satisfaction in 1965 as well. But this is an unknown band, but I would champion, if I was doing my video in the top 10 American bands, of the important American bands, greatest American bands, I would start with the Sonics. The same year, we get the Doors. Now, the Doors really are one of the greatest bands of all time. And if someone would say, I think it's the Doors, I would have no problem with that, except the Doors aren't a rock band, are they? They're sort of glorified, trippy version of bossa nova. That's what they are. There's no distortion, there's no rock beats. It's not rock music. It's brilliant. And I would say, in terms of rocking, you've got 7 in the 70s by Love, Arthur Lee. That's a bloody track, that is. And the Forever Changes is monstrous. But these, if Love had only sounded like 7 in 70s, then I would be saying this is one of the great early rock bands, equal to the Small Faces, the Kinks, the Who, Led Zeppelin, Cream, the Jeff Beck Group. I'll keep adding ones on every time we do it. I can add British ones on. And I can tell you something, even when we get to the likes of Deep Purple or Rainbow, I still think they're better than most of the American bands. But don't stop putting the American bands down. You're just going to lose half of your audience. Stay with me, Americans. You have got good music. You got jazz. You got funk, soul. Don't get annoyed just because you haven't got rock music. I know you invented rock music, but you haven't got it because us British came along and we improved rock music. None of the other stuff. We can't improve any of the other stuff. And therein lies the key. There's another key. Jimi Hendrix over here, and the fact that we can't improve the other stuff. Therein lies the key, doesn't it? Right. One question you could ask is, why are the British bands so great? And I think every American is going to grudgingly say yes, that Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and the Beatles and the Ramones, and Free, there's just thrown another one in for you. You've got to say, they are amazing bands. I love those bands, You know how many Americans have said to me, oh my God, you live in the West Midlands. Half the bands I like come from around there. Half of them. And I go, well, you're a big Jan Duran fan, are you? They never say yes. So I put myself off with that joke. It wasn't much of a joke. Because the reason I put myself off, I thought that was rubbish. Timing was good on that one. Delivered brilliant. But the joke in itself wasn't that great, was it? Because Duran Duran aren't that bad. I needed a band from the West Midlands that was worse. Tapow. Now, if I could do that joke again with Tapow as the punchline, I might have an actual workable joke. Shall I try that? I can't set it up now. I'm not going to get the timing right. It's hard. You have to sort of forget about the timing to get the timing right. Anyway, I ain't going to do that. You can put that in. Can you redo the joke, but with a decent rubbish Birmingham band in there? Let's get the right one. I always set you a bit of challenge. It's the teacher in me. Get the audience involved. Get the students involved. Get them thinking outside the box. You're stalling to let your brain catch up, aren't you? So, why are the British bands so good? This is why they're so good. Right? Rock music, of course, comes from America. It's a mixture of rock and roll and rockabilly. It's a mixture of the blues and electric blues. We can see the beginnings of rock music in the blues and rhythm and blues. We can see the dirty, stinging guitar of Sister Rosetta Tharpe, the electrification of Muddy Waters, of Howlin' Wolf. We can see the early rock and roll experiments of Ike Turner. We can see a whole roster of blues guitarists, from Guitar Slim, Johnny Guitar Watson, Buddy Guy, Freddie King throughout the 50s and the 60s. This is where rock is born. We also have a whole chunk from jazz coming in. There's sort of a band that's going to end up as prog and psychedelic jazz and all that sort of stuff. That's coming from jazz as well, and rhythm and blues. You got bits of Mingus in there, bits of Thelonious Monk, bits of bebop with the riffing. It's all American. All these things are coming our way. And what happens in the UK is that we distill all that into 3 lines of attack, right? 3 of them. And nobody ever says this, so they never say it in this way. In the 1950s, you're a youngster coming up, you're going to become a part of one of 3 sort of, what would be fads, though. I couldn't call them fads. It could be involved with all of them. The first one is the trad jazz boom. So there's a trad jazz boom in the 1940s here with people like Humphrey Littleton and Cyril Davis, those types of people. And this is a British take on New Orleans jazz, you know, sort of New Orleans frontline, Louis Armstrong, King Oliver type of approach. And these are very backwards looking. They really want to have the authentic, you know, sort of, and they call this trad jazz in the UK. And that's a training ground for a certain bunch of musicians. From this, certain musicians start to get an interest also in blues, but also American folk forms, people like Leadbelly. And out of this comes Lonnie Donegan, and Lonnie Donegan starts to do versions of Leadbelly songs in a sort of very English way, which ends up in skiffle. And the whole thing about skiffle, it's like the 1950s version of punk, and I don't think the Americans have a version of this. So this is a form of music where you could form a band with no money. It goes right back to the spasm bands of New Orleans in the late 1890s, right? And I did the research, and Leadbelly, I think he was from Shreveport, if I believe rightly, but wherever he was from, the spasm band around about 1895, somewhere like that, went up and had a sort of residency. When we say a residency, the spasm band was a bunch of basic, like these white kids, trashy kids that made their own instruments and busked on the side of the street, you know, in New Orleans. And they went up to, I think, to Shreveport. So there's a good chance that Leadbelly, as a young guy, would have seen these people. So there's this line that comes through America of making your own instruments. And I don't know where that line goes in America, but in the UK, it ends up as a skiffle movement. So the skiffle movement would be, as long as you can get an old beat-up acoustic guitar, it doesn't even have to have all the strings on it, but you can get an old beat-up acoustic guitar. You got a washboard. Now, a washboard was this thing that all British people had in the 50s, and you'd wash your clothes, and then you'd do it against the washboard, and it did something, cleaned it or dried it. I can't remember. No, the mangle dried it. They never found any use for the mangle in the skiffle bands, but they did with the washboard. So they're scratched it all down. They get on their mum's bloody things that when they're sewing, you know, the things you put on your fingers. What are they called? Thumbelina, tiny little things. What are they called? This is what happens when you get old. But you scratch any with one of those. Thimble, Thumbelina thimble. See, I'm so close. So it's scratching away, and then the bass would be provided. You get a tea chest, right? Everyone had a tea chest in the 1950s. You get a broom handle, tie a piece of string on it, stick the broom handle so it would then, when you twang the string that was tied to the top of the broom handle, it would then act as a resonance chamber, and then you'd pluck it and bend it. And then you could sing, you know, the rock of the land is a mighty fine land, the rock of the land is a mighty fine land, and they all love it. And all these kids there, they go, oh, shall we form a band? You can form this band in your living room. So you get Paul McCartney, John Lennon, George Harrison, you get Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, you get Pete Townsend. All these people are like learning the guitar and learning to play, not rock and roll. They're learning to play Leadbelly songs, old folk songs. They're listening to Big Bill Broonzy. This is key. But the other thing that never gets mentioned, there's also in the UK in the 50s, this modern jazz fad. My dad was a part of that. And he said there were literally jazz clubs all over the place, people playing modern jazz. And this had come through people like Stan Kenton and Dave Brubeck, Modern Jazz Quartet, Chet Baker, Derry Mulligan. So this is a training ground for British musicians. Cyril Davis, I believe, brings over Muddy Waters. And when he arrives, he's got an amp. All these kids are there and they see the electric guitar. Also, the American rock and roll moves from sort of Bill Haley in the Comets, which is basically a rhythm and blues band. Chuck Berry brings the guitar in, and then you've got like Peggy Sue, oh boy. And you've also got Eddie Cochran as well, who's writing his own songs and playing guitar along with Buddy Holly. Right, so there we go, and everybody's looking at. They're watching, they're watching Buddy Holly when he appears in various films. They're watching Eddie Cochran in The Girls Can't Help It. They're looking at the guitars. I think maybe Cochran's got an L5, Gibson L5. Buddy Holly's got a Telecaster. It looks like something from outer space, doesn't it? Everyone's watching this. They're all seeing this in the UK, and there's a melting pot effect. Now, what is interesting is those musicians then get access to the Marshall amp. So Jim Marshall's a drum teacher. He's, got this shop. He's selling drum stuff, but he's also selling guitar stuff. And everyone wants a Vox AC30, and they can't get them. So he looks at the wiring diagram and he creates his own amp based on the AC30 called the Marshall amp. And then a whole bunch of these skiffly musicians who are now in proper bands, and they want to be able to play loud. They walk in there, Pete Townsend being the main guy, as a lad before he's famous, and says to Jim, can you make me can you do like a 100-watt amp with 4 speakers, 4x12 speakers in? And when you turn it up, can you make it distort? And Jim Marshall goes, what do you mean? So suddenly we have the Marshall amp. Let's get into Hendrix here. So all these guitarists have something that the Americans haven't got. That's why your guitarists all sound like Robbie Krieger, right? That's what you sound like. You haven't got that sound. The British have this guitar sound, and that starts to develop. It starts with the Rolling Stones, it starts with the Kinks, and then Cream come out. And Cream are a product of this training ground. They're virtuoso musicians, and they're not a band. They're not like the Sonics have been formed and they all know each other. It's not like the Ramones. Cream are the first super group. These are virtuoso rock, blues, jazz musicians. And Clapton is the blues, and the other two are the jazz. And Clapton's playing a Les Paul through a Marshall amp distorted. Now, I know Clapton gets maligned, and I've done it on my channel, but Clapton is a real deal, right? The way Clapton's playing it, just, the Beano album with John Mayall sets the agenda. I was watching a video the other day. It's quite interesting. I'm glad I can bring this up. I was watching a video of Clapton quite recently. He's up on stage. He's not playing a Strat. He was playing a Les Paul. My God, he sounds better on the Les Paul. Eric, if you're watching this, can you do more on the Les Paul? I've really been thinking about this subject, is that, because this is where, once you start to look at this, you start to see where the American rock bands beat the British bands. I think I know where it is. And then you know where you're going to go to see where the great American rock bands are. Hendrix comes over. And Hendrix arrives in London in 1966. He gets his Strat, he sticks it through a Marshall, he overdrives, he's doing all the feedback. Now, Hendrix is the real deal. He's learnt to play guitar on the Chitlin circuit with people like Little Richard and Sam and Dave and Don Covey and all these people that he's been playing with. So he can do the whole show thing that Ike Turner used to do. He can do the whole T-bone walk, play it behind his neck. He can do the duck walk. He can do all these things. I don't think he did the duck walk, but he does the equivalent of it. Anyway, that's not the point. So Hendrix comes in. He's got the Marshall. He's got the British rhythm section, which is coming out of jazz. So you've got basically what you have with Hendrix basically is B.B. King, Freddie King, Buddy Guy, T-Bone Walker. Let's say T-Bone Walker through a Marshall, feedbacking all over the place, right? But T-Bone Walker's taking LSD and he's got John Coltrane's rhythm section behind him. That is what Hendrix is, okay? And the reason they've got that is because there's a thing going on in London at the time, which is this bringing together of blues musicians, the skiffle guys, the rock and roll guys, and the jazz guys, and they're all coming in together. And the bass players and the drummers are tending to come out of Elvin Jones, Tony Williams. There's that school where the guitarists are coming out of more the blues. What Hendrix has is the sting and dirtiness of the blues, right? Once the British established themselves as playing their sort of British version of the blues, a sort of middle-class art college version of the blues, they bring in this sort of English aesthetic. Now, I always go champion the English aesthetic, but imagine taking the dirty American blues from the down south, you know, the real stuff with the sting and bite that the blues has, and the danger and the darkness, you know, the when blues sounds amazing, the heaviness. You know, when you go back to a Charlie Patton record and you put that Charlie Patton record on and you hear the riffs, even though it's just acoustic guitar from the distance coming through that one mic in 1927 or wherever he recorded. But then you hear the riffs and you go, oh my God, there's a heaviness there. And it's coming at you. And that heaviness is darkness and heaviness. That is the gift of the blues. It's the aesthetic idea of heaviness, not the pastoral or happy music or sad music or music that tells a story, just heaviness. And heaviness it's come out of a certain experience of not just black people, but downtrodden Southerners that lost the bloody Civil War. And the distorted heavy guitar is literally, that's what heaviness represents. And those American guys have it. But when the British get hold of it, they've never suffered. They've always been like bloody, you know, middle-class types. They've got a bit of money. Mammy, can I have a Fender Stratocaster? Of course you can. And it's the guys that got those. You know, the poor guys couldn't afford those guitars. They're trying to build their own guitars. But the more posture ones, they got that. If you were in London and you owned a Strat at that time, we would be now talking about you like you're a bloody living legend. And that's the truth. God, that was really the truth, and it was nasty, but it is the case, right? Yeah, that's quite profound. That is, because what we're really saying here is the British guitarists just happen to be in the right place at the right time, but in America, because it's an older form and it was established out of the blues, they got more of a quality control. So their players, like Freddie King and all these players, are bloody unbelievable. Buddy Guy, it's unbelievable. Hendrix is in the lineage of that. He comes here and that's the conglomeration. But what Hendrix has got is the dirt. And we're going to call it from now on the dirt. Blues guitarists I like have the dirt. The British don't have the dirt. They replace the dirt with like a sort of rough and frilly, like, you know, Regency period sleeves, don't they? They put that on everything, don't they? They're like Byrons. The British rock stars are like Byrons. They've got poetry. And they're full of angst, even though they're a lord, right? That is the existentialist heart of British art, right? And so this comes into the music. And the rock stars that are British, that are pulling on the blues, very quickly create like their own little kingdom that they exist in, full of Freud, you know, frilly sleeves and ruffs and Regency suits and all that type of thing. And they become little princes in that court, and it is literally their court. And they sing songs from the literary tradition that come out of the romanticism of our poets. Progressive rock is born out of this. And the guitar players take the blues, that dirty sting, and stick it to the man. And before you know, Eric Clapton and Peter Green and all these players have got this mournful thing that reaches its peak in Dave Gilmour. And middle-class British people love Dave Gilmour, right? Because it's the blues and it's the motive. But what's it emoting? It's emoting a melancholy. The melancholy that you have walking through a rainy English countryside. You know, it's like the war poets. It's a different thing. It's not T-Bone Walker. It's not. And that's the key. The Americans, once they get those bloody Marshall amps, right, they start to proper overdrive, shouldn't be beating us hand down. Now, my mate Kevin Gammond, who was there at the time, he was in London at the time, you know, playing alongside Cream and Zeppelin, and I mean, he played in the band of Joy Robert Plant, so he had, you know, Bonham as his drummer, Robert Plant as his lead singer. He was playing alongside the Stones, Clapton. He was in London at that time, and Kev sometimes barges into my videos, and he did make an appearance the other day. He said to me that he was playing, can't remember which, I think it might have been Band of Joy, Or it could have been, he was playing with Jimmy Cliff, the reggae artist or ska reggae artist. Anyway, point is, he arrives at the Whiskey A Go-Go in 68, something like that. And he said he's there with Robbie Blunt is on guitar. So that may have been Bronco, actually, because he was in the band Bronco with Robbie Blunt. And he says him and Robbie go down to the Whiskey, they do their set, and then this other band comes on, and it's the Allman Brothers. And he said they all looked up at Dwayne Allman playing the bloody guitar, and they went, we may as well just go home. What are we bloody bothering with? We can't compete against this. Mike Bloomfield, real deal. Dwayne Allman, the real deal. That down and dirty Southern sound is where I think the Americans have it over us. It's a dirtier, truer rock sound, and it's got bite. Now, I'm going to really sort of come in from the outside now. So, if I was champion American rock music, I would start with Van Halen. They're one of the greatest rock bands of all time, and they're definitely up there for me. But the thing with Van Halen don't really emerge to 78, 79. They do an incredible thing of keeping rock going, because all the other rock bands are giving up at that point, but they seem to carve out something else. But I want to find the greatest of the classic period. I want to find the band that is equal to a Led Zeppelin, not a follower onto a Led Zeppelin. So that takes Metallica out, it takes all the Bay Area thrash metal bands, it takes Guns N' Roses out. Now, these are all monster bands as far as I'm concerned, absolute genius level bands, right? But what of that classic period? Who is the greatest of that? Well, let's start with Kiss, right? Kiss is an entry level band without a doubt. They're designed to appeal to kids that are about 12 years old. It's a cartoon, right? Now, in England, the band that fulfilled that for me was Status Quo, a completely different band to Kiss, but it was Status Quo. In 1980, when I discovered the new wave of British heavy metal, there was me and two other kids in my school that looked like that. Everyone else was listening to the Human League or whatever it was, right? And they decided to have a school disco. So we go down to the school disco, right? And everyone's dancing to Dexy's Midnight Runners. They were dancing, in fact, to Gino. And that was the popular song. So it's always like, the DJ's up front, you know, he's really old, you know, like that. 70s kids disco, you know. Dodgy places, really. Dangerous for kids to be at a 70s kids disco back in the... in that period of time. You know, I've lived through it. Never need to go to war. I went to a 70s children's disco. So I'm in there. Oh, Gino. They're all playing, all the kids are dancing to that. They're all loving it. And us rockers with a little bit of hair that we managed to grow at 12 years old down to here, and I've got my Motorhead t-shirt on, and I've got my studded belt on, and I've got my jeans, and I'm stood there like this, and we're not dancing. I ain't dancing to Dexy's Midnight Runners. I'm not dancing to that. Not dancing to B.A. Robinson. I'm not dancing to Barbara Dickinson or whatever they're playing, you know, Gilbert O'Sullivan. I ain't going to dance to Gilbert O'Sullivan. And we're all really moody. So we go up to the DJ and say, can you play some rock? What sort of rock do you want? Some heavy rock. Well, no, because I don't know whether they're going to like, oh, please. Well, I might do it. They don't. So we go up and get really shirty on. This is an actual event. This has happened. Please play some rock. All right, next track after this one, we'll get some rock. So we sidle up ready to headbang, right? Track ends. And then in comes Whatever You Want. Whatever you want, whatever you like. And we all come forward, us three. Everybody, especially the girls, they just split. So there's only us three. I'll reenact it for you because I've got the space. This is why I cleared this space here, because this bit's very much like, if I go over to it, can you hear me still? So this is it. So we now enter like this. We enter like this, and we stand there, and they go, right, the next track's going to go, it might be AC/DC, maybe Judas Priest United, that would be good. I like United. What about Ace of Spades? That will be good. And it comes in. Whatever you want, whatever you like. So we're stuck there. We can't walk off at this point. And so we stand there and we all start doing this. Whatever you want. And we're doing that like this. And we start like that. We might even have had that. We weren't doing that one because that had gone out of fashion. And we weren't doing that. We were sort of going, like headbanging like this. Everybody's, well, gone, is he doing that? Everyone's doing this. They're all looking at us. They're laughing at us. But we're fronting it like proper rock kids. We're fronting it. We don't stop. And everyone's watching us, and the tune's going on, and my neck starts to seize up because I wasn't a seasoned headbanger. This was the first time I'd really done it in public. I'd done it on my own in private, but probably only for about 40 seconds. But here we got a whole song's worth, and my neck's seizing up by the end. It's like, I'm trying to do it like this, right? I woke up the next day. It was like, I was like this. I got all like that. You know, that type of thing. I couldn't move anything at all. It was terrible. The point is in mainstream culture, the only band you were going to come across was Status Quo. That was the British version. Now, Status Quo, amazing band. I still love them to this day. Not the 80s Quo, but proper 70s Quo is a sight to behold. It's down and dirty rock. That's the point, you see. People who like Status Quo, and I've got friends who like Status Quo, they're not so keen on the Led Zeppelins and Deep Purples because they saw those as being artsy-fartsy. And they were. That's their Achilles heel. It's what makes them great, but that's their Achilles heel. A kid is not interested in artsy-fartsy. What they're interested in is down and dirty. And Status Quo was the closest we had. Now, in America, you got Kiss. And Kiss lures them in with some sort of comic strip idea of what rock music is. Now, they're rubbish. Kiss are rubbish. So I'm not going to put them in there. I don't think anybody expects me to. So I've removed Kiss from there. We've got Aerosmith, merges about 1974. Rolling Stones drive band with a little bit of Led Zeppelin in there. They do have that sort of down south twang to them, but it's so derivative. I don't think they made the albums, you know, Walk This Way, Sweet Emotion. They're all great, but they seem, the drugs get to them. They do hardly nothing for most of the 1980s. And then it's unforgivable what they do later on when they start getting ghostwriters in. Although it's bloody brilliant, but it's brilliant pop music. Brilliant pop music. It's big ballads that you stick in films. You know, it's not down and dirty rock music. It's not Led Zeppelin. So we take Aerosmith out of it. Van Halen are too late. So who have we got next? Right, so let's start going through it. You've got all those garage bands that definitely have all the down and dirtiness. You've got MC5, which are the best of them. Then you've got the Stooges, you've got New York Dolls, you've got the Ramones. Right, that's a different thing. That is not like the epic rock band, right? And they ain't got the chops because there's no point in comparing them to a Led Zeppelin or a Deep Purple or a Black Sabbath or the Beatles even, right? So I don't think that it's a different thing and it's going in a different direction. You've got Grand Funk Railroad. Now I'm going to tell you something about Grand Funk Railroad, right? Grand Funk Railroad, okay, here in the UK, nobody knows about them at all. They wouldn't even know the name, most people. They don't listen to any of the albums. I never heard them at all. I read about them and I never heard them. Recently, I decided to try a bit of a deep down dive. So I'm a real novice on Grand Funk Railroad, but I put the first album on, which is unbelievable. It's just incredible. The sound is brilliant. So Grand Funk Railroad, I think, would be in there. But as I went through the albums, it didn't quite, it's not like Led Zeppelin 4. And what it's offering doesn't replace the heaviness of that. It's hard to explain. And this is what I find with a lot of the rock bands. And I was thinking about this, and I think what the problem is as well, what us British have got, which the Americans didn't got, is that here in the UK, we've got the BBC. We invented television, we invented the radio, we invented all these things. So by the 1920s, we had recording studios being built because we had the first television, we had a film industry. And so by the time you get to the 60s, you've got studios like Abbey Road and Olympic and all these studios in London that are proper studios. And the people working them, they've got white suits on and pens lined up like that. And they've got their hair Brill cream back. And they can solder things together and they can invent stuff, right? So our studios are incredible. When you listen to Led Zeppelin on the first album, you know, which I think was recorded at Olympic, was it? But listen to it. Now go and listen to any American band. Go and listen to In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida by Iron Butterfly. It's just not the same because your band, your studios in America, they grew out of sort of weird, like, snake oil salesman types like Sam Phillips who would find some shop somewhere and set up a 2-track recorder in there and then, you know, go around searching for talent, you know, like Elvis Presley and get him in there, and it all sounds all echoey and horrible. Nobody says it. I'm telling the truth now. It's true. You just ain't got the studios like us. You need the blokes with the pens. You hadn't got it. We'd got it, you see. And then so our bands sound better. So often those early American rock bands don't sound as good as a Deep Purple or a Black Sabbath or a Led Zeppelin. They just don't have that sound. And also, because of that session scene that existed in London and was concentrated, whereas in America you've got all sorts of different session scenes all around the place, perhaps. Because I'm exploring this as an idea. I haven't thought these ideas out much, so I might be wrong here. But I'm putting it all out there. I'm saying it could be. So people like Jimmy Page, they'd actually learnt the studio themselves, so they knew what the studio could do. Whereas if you're playing in a band like Grand Funk Railroad and you get signed, do you really know what you can do in the studio like Jimmy Page was when you have an idea of the drum sound you want, how to get a proper distorted guitar sound? One of the few guys that had that background was Frank Zappa, albeit he had one of those sort of, basic studios in a shop somewhere with Studio Z, but he didn't know how the studio worked. He was able to envisage it. So the Beach Boys, who had been around for a while, recording from the early 60s, Brian Jones knew what the studio could do. So the quality of the recording studios, the access to 4 tracks, the access to 8 tracks is all affecting everything. And so a lot of these American bands, when I listen to them, they don't have the sound, they don't have the epic sort of weight until you get into the mid-70s. And then by that time, the American bands then become too slick. And you've got a whole bunch of Totos and Foreigners and Journeys and Bostons and REO Speedwagons. That's what you've got there. And they definitely don't compare next to the bands I'm on about. Right, so let's get back to that dirty Southern Texas, Alabama twang, which the Americans have that we haven't got. So we now can start to cycle in on the Southern boogie bands, as we used to call Southern rock bands. Now, this is where it gets serious, right? And this is all my taste. I'm only saying it, right? I don't think Aerosmith are equal to our rock bands. I don't. I'm sorry. I would say that Montrose, the first album, with Sammy Hagar on, that's a really brilliant rock album from early 70s. It's not equal to a equivalent rock band album coming out from our bands. Like Led Zeppelin had done everything by 73, but it does lay the groundwork for a certain type of rock music, which is going to be very important. That's a really great album. It's one album. It doesn't put Montrose in the bracket. Lynyrd Skynyrd. I'm a massive fan of Lynyrd Skynyrd. Now, why do I love Lynyrd Skynyrd so much? It's because when I listen to Lynyrd Skynyrd, they're doing something that none of the British rock bands can do. They have that southern sound, but it's quite polite in a way. It's dirty, but it's not quite as heavy as a Sabbath or a Zeppelin. But it's wonderful. There's a funkiness. And this is the other thing that the American bands have. When they get it right, there's a funkiness there. There's a soulfulness there. I think the Allman Brothers are in that, but they're not quite heavy enough, the Allman Brothers. It's something else. And your great rock bands, Little Feat have this, and they're just not a rock band at all. They're a sort of Southern boogie bands. The Neville Brothers, you've got that thing going on, and it's incredible. And it can be very heavy, right? So we now arrive, I've done 40 minutes on exploring this, that I think the bands that have that sound, right, are the bands that I think are equal to our bands. Now, the thing with our bands, as I said, they have this sort of virtuosity that comes from, jazz musicians being in the skiffle movement, the trad jazz bands, all that type of thing, as a certain type of virtuosity. What the British bands do is that they take the blues, and nobody says this either, but our bands like Cream and Hendrix, they then do these long guitar solos. I mean, talking long, 15-minute guitar solos. That's the British innovation, and that's exploratory and exciting. And American bands start doing it. I mean, Grateful Dead are that. To Jefferson Airplane start doing it. They all start doing it because they're listening to the jazz. But in the Grateful Dead's case, they don't quite have the virtuosity. It's very novice. It's like a novice's version of what jazz is. But someone like Cream, they are the real deal. Mitch Mitchell plays like Elvin Jones. It's a different thing. There's a virtuosity in our bands, right? There's one band that has the dirt, it has the funk, it has that southern bite, it has the heaviness of guitar sound, And it has, for me, or at least my ears tell me, a kind of jazz virtuosity that Hendrix had. And I believe this band to be the greatest American rock band of all time. And that band is, of course, ZZ Top. One of my favourite bands of all time. So I'm proffering them. What do you think? Is ZZ Top the greatest rock band? Can you think of a band that tops them? Why do I put ZZ Top forward? They're formed in the late 60s. I mean, Billy Gibbons actually opened up for Hendrix, and Hendrix turned around and said Billy Gibbons is the greatest guitarist in the world, and he is. Billy Gibbons is bloody amazing, right? I would have Billy Gibbons over bloody Peter Green and Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page and Paul Kossoff, the lot. If you want to hear rock guitar playing, I'm not like people bringing in the jazz or doing anything like that. If you just want to hear straight down the line blues, pentatonic, rock guitar playing, Billy Gibbons is a master unlike anything we had in the UK. It's received in the UK. Billy Gibbons is the real deal. Right, I can listen to him till the cows come home. He makes my hair stand on end. People think I don't like blues guitar, but Dave Gilmour has not got what the Gibbons has got. And Billy Gibbons will play, I'm calling him the Gibbons now. I'm just calling him the Gibbons. No one calls him the Gibbons. In Birmingham, we at the same time, we had Steve Gibbons. That was our Gibbons. And if I had to have a Gibbons competition, a Gibbons off, it's going to be Billy. I love Billy Gibbons guitar. I know I'm being facetious, but I love Billy Gibbons guitar playing. He's way above. And even Dwayne Allman, who was a fantastic guitar player, just not around long enough. But Billy Gibbons, listen to his slide playing, listen to his dong playing, the harmonics, all the stuff he does, it's absolutely incredible. Listen to the riffs, listen to the sort of proper, plucked Texas bloody, juice that he brings in. There's a country in there, which is really important for proper rock guitar playing. Jimmy Page has got that down. He's trying to do it, but it's second hand, right? So the way I'm going to approach ZZ Top, I'm going to tell you about my experience of ZZ Top and where I come from. And then we're going to have a chat about some of the albums, not all of them, because there's a lot of albums. But this is why I proffer them. Formed in 1969. Their first album, I think, comes out sort of 72-ish. I'm not too sure. Somewhere around then. And then they just bring out brilliant album, brilliant album, brilliant album. And they do not diminish. They do something that Zeppelin and Black Sabbath could never do. They go up until they bring out Eliminator in 1985 or whenever, it's 84. And they change the bloody world, putting them on a level which is equal to Metallica, even though they're from that period. Does that make sense? And then they're in films, and you see them cropping up at the end of bloody, in Back to the Future, aren't they? And I think they're even in that one about when they go to the Santa's up to the North Pole in the Polar Express. You've got a CGI ZZ Top, I think, at that point, haven't you? Right? They've got incredible charisma. They've got a brilliant image. They've got massive beards. We haven't got any bands with massive beards. Everyone's doing big beards now, aren't they? Everybody. You can forget about it. ZZ Top invented big beards in 1979. And the thing is, they really know what they're doing, because the two got Dusty Hill and Billy. They got the massive beards. I'll get onto the beards in a minute. But the bloke who hasn't got the beard is called Frank Beard. This is genius. Right, so we used to have a programme here in the UK called The Tube. It was on every Friday. So you finish the week at school, it's really, we come home and you put The Tube on. And so many musical experiences for me started with that show. And one day, ZZ Top walk out. They got these grey boiler suits. They got the massive beards. They got these two red Explorer guitars, right? They look brilliant. They got Frank Beard. He's got a massive kit. I'm looking at the big kit. I thought, he's not a rock drummer. He wouldn't have a massive kit like that unless he could play. Which is sort of true. I know nobody wants to admit that. Only rubbish drummers have small drum kits. I mean, there are good drummers who have small drum kits. But, I won't get into that. Let's save that for another video. If you want to know about my opinion about big drum kits, then I'll tell you. They're bloody hard to play. I tell you, you've got to be able to play a big drum kit. Don't listen to what anyone says. He's just making up for somebody with that big drum kit. I'm doing the video now. Let's just not do that now. So, ZZ Top come out. It's guitar, bass and drums, and they come in. I've never heard a sound like it. The riffs, the crunch, the balance between bass and guitar, the way the vocals work. Billy Gibbons is singing. He doesn't have to sing like Robert Plant. He doesn't have to scream and shout like David Coverdale or Ian Gillan, because in his voice he's got the real deal blues. He growls. He's beautiful. And so's Dusty Hill. Dusty Hill will take over, a little bit higher up, but he's still got that growl, and they're there, and they've got dance routines going on. And then Billy Gibbons starts to solo. And in his soloing, right, because I was a jazz guy, Hendrix has a way of flying when he plays. Even though it's blues derived, I feel there's a freedom there. And there's space in the music to explore it. And the rhythm section acts in a certain way. ZZ Top have this for me. They create so much space for improvising. And when they're improvising, there's a freedom in the way Billy Gibbons plays. He sounds connected to me. He sounds like he's just in the moment and he's flying. Dave Gilmour sounds like he's crafted a solo and he's got all the right wheeze in all the right places, you know. And when he can't come ideas, he's rich enough to hire Lee Ritner to come in and say, have you got any ideas I can copy? I feel that's been crafted in the studio. With Billy Gibbons, I feel it's like Hendrix. He picks up that guitar and he flies. He's more perfect than Hendrix. It's great. He's a greater rock guitarist than Hendrix in pure rock guitar terms. He really is, especially in 1973. No one can touch him. Billy Gibbons is one of the greatest guitarists of all time. And he's got his own sound and guitar sounds. And this is what I saw on the tube. So I then go out, and my dad loved it too. So it was a funny thing because me and my dad both liked ZZ. Well, my dad liked it. He was like a modern jazz fan. But he really liked ZZ Top. So off he goes. And we go down and we go and buy Eliminator on vinyl and bring it home. And then that album I lived by. It was in the 80s when everybody was listening to Tears for Fears or whatever it is they like, Haircut 100 or bloody whatever it was, Flock of Seagulls rubbish. Then you had bloody ZZ Top, right? And their videos were all over the place. They were played on the radio and it was proper rock, and it wasn't Zeppelin and it wasn't Sabbath. It was funky and groovy, and I loved Eliminator. Then the next album came out, which I think was called Afterburner. It's got Sleeping Bag on. I bought that, but this is the thing with, I'm going to get onto this. Well, let's get onto this now, then go back. So we'll do it in order. I watched recently Sea of Tranquility, top 10 of ZZ Top. Because Pete Pardo is much older than me, right? He obviously discovered ZZ Top in the 70s, probably in 1973 when he was like 40 or something. So he loves all those 70s albums, and they are the best albums. So he sees Eliminator as being the beginning of their commercial period when they got loads of synthesizers and 80s production in. Well, I beg to differ a little bit, Pete. It's definitely true on Afterburner and Recycler. They know what the formula is, and you get this sort of 80s sequence sound, and it's not the dirty rock of the 70s, without a doubt. Now, I saw them on the tube. I bought Eliminator, and then they reran an Old Grey Whistle test concert, and they did Cheap Sunglasses. And when I heard that, I can remember watching that, and I can remember thinking, oh my God, they got a jazz fusion drummer. Frank Beard's a monster drummer. His drumming's incredible, and there's a freedom there. I can't explain it. So I then went and got on tape. I taped it off a mate, I think. Not all of it, but I had a bit of De Guelo. And De Guelo was a bit weird for me, but I liked it, but it was a bit weird. And that was it. I had Eliminator on vinyl. I'd got Afterburner on tape. I didn't get Recycler. I just thought I'd go. And that was it. That was ZZ Top done, and I had De Guelo. But I really loved them. As I've got older, I've listened to the 70s albums, and they are incredible. But that passed me by. But I know what Tres Hombres is. So, in preparing for this, I would decide to go onto Amazon and get the albums on CDs. And this is a thing that is worth. I've got it in my pocket here. I prepared this one earlier. This box set is so bloody cheap, and it's got 5 of the greatest rock albums on of all time. On this one, we've got Rio Grande Mud, Tres Hombres, Fandango, De Guelo, and Eliminator. If you're new to ZZ Top, this, just go and buy it. I mean, it's about £8, so it's about $10 off Amazon. And then there's another one, and I'm going to get it because and that's got the other albums, like El Loco, I assume, and it's probably got Afterburner. And that won't be quite as good as this one, because really, those 5 albums are the ones you would want to have, you know, really. And I've been listening to this in the car. I know these albums, so it's not like I've discovered anything, but putting them back to back and listening through, this is my opinion about it, right? Tres Hombres is a masterpiece rock album. And the thing about this, the production's incredible. The playing's incredible. They don't just play blues rock. When they do a slow blues, they know how to play a slow blues. The British bands like Led Zeppelin never really knew how to play a slow blues, in my opinion. I used to play with blues artists. I played on the blues circuit. This is where I get my love-hate relationship with the blues. I played for a British blues guitarist called Ian Parker for about 2 years. And I also did like sort of depping gigs and session gigs with Ainsley Lister and Joanne Shaw Taylor. And so I had to really get my head around the blues. When you're playing a slow 6/8 blues, they're the ones that go bum, 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 you know that. So that would be like, I can't quit you, baby. And I put you everywhere. That's a slow blues, right? If you take a slow blues, the way Zeppelin have played it, that they're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and you feel the 6, right? When I started to listen to the American players, they don't play it like that, and ZZ Top don't play it like that. You play it like 4/4. It's 4/4. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is, I'm going to try, in fact, well, let's do this properly. Let's do this properly for you. I knew this was going to be an epic video because I'm really trying to take on, American rock music, and I'm trying to champion it. That's all right. So if you're going. So, the British way of playing that would really to be played like a bunch of British people, or like a military band, like it's a brass band. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, tap, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Whereas the Americans will play it like 4/4. So this is like stressing this now. 2, 3, 4, and you get this one. So when I used to gig, rather than focusing on the hi-hat and going step, I would just focus on this. And you feel it, but that's where it's at. And ZZ Top are almost textbooks when they're playing the blues. But also, they don't just do the blues. They do all sorts of other things. They're not a blues band. They don't just rest on that. Our British groups, if you listen to Free, they pretty much, that's what they do. ZZ Top aren't that. There's all sorts of bits of soul, there's New Orleans funk in there, there's even bits of jazz, there's bits of pop music, bits of the beach. There's all sorts of stuff in there. It's really incredible. It has a richness about it that I feel that the great British bands have. But it's got its own thing as well. So if you can get this box set, there's a couple of things I want to say before we finish up. Right, Tres Hombres is incredible. You know, waiting for the bus. Jesus just left Chicago. We got LaGrange on here, haven't we? All incredible. I got to be honest, when I put Rio Grande Mud on, now Rio Grande Mud is supposed to be, they make their first album and then they do the masterpiece Tres Hombres, and Rio Grande Mud, it's not quite there. I think it's as great as Tres Hombres. In fact, I would even say it's even a bit greater. The sound and production's incredible. I don't know when it was made. I think it must be a sort of around 72, 73. Is that right? 72, maybe 71 even. The Rio Grande Mud is incredible. It's essential, you know. Fandango captures them live. Now, they're playing live, doing a lot of cover versions on here, but we do have a studio side. Equal, absolutely equal. And then De Guelo is them. The reason why I didn't like it, it's too funky back then when I was a youngster. It's New Orleans funk, and it's incredible, and it really just pushes out more and really shows you what they can do. But it still rocks. I've just been listening to this in the car. I'm Bad, I'm Nationwide. It's so funny. The lyrics are funny. Their lyrics are great. It's not what you expect blues people to sing about, even though it relates to what it sort of relates to the blues, but it's got a contemporary edge to it, you know. It's just they're funny. The lyrics are funny. They're rude as well. And putting on when I put on Eliminator again, I know this album inside out. And what my favourite track on Eliminator, and it's a masterpiece. It's not all production. It's just bass guitar and drums. It's just been EQ'd in a certain way. Legs has obviously got a little bit of sequencing going on, and there's a little bit of that. But when you listen to I Got the Six, that is pure rock. And that first guitar solo, they just fly. And it's like Billy Gibbons, they're going down. What is it? Is it? It is. There's nothing to it, it's just brilliant. Right, so that's the riff, and the lyrics are like, it goes, I got the six, give me your nine, you know. And I think when I was a kid, I must be playing dice or cards, some card game. I didn't understand what it was about. Listen, the lyrics are so rude. But then when the first guitar solo, they don't do it over this. The bass goes. He just takes off and he goes. You know, there's all that going on, sorry. So there's all that going on, and it's the arrangements. And Billy Gibbons always sounds like he flies. His guitar sounds is just the best. Right, we're coming up to the hour. I've spent an hour on this. I think ZZ Top are the greatest American rock band. I want to see if you agree. If you think someone's greater, please put it in the comments of this video. If you want to know more about them, then go and buy that. But make sure you love the rock. If you're some prog fan and you like sort of faffy, frilly music, you know, don't get this. This is down and dirty rock music, but it's the best it ever gets. This is like AC/DC. It's beyond AC/DC. It really is. And you got 5 of the best albums there with that. And then if you love that, you can go buy the other box sets for 120 quid. You could have virtually the whole discography. Because the thing with these, they kept going. And the albums aren't bad. They've kept going. They're one of the longest bands until Dusty Hill died. You know, that lineup just stayed there. They're like the Rolling Stones. This is one of the great bands, right? And I'll finish with this. When I got into ZZ Top, I can remember, you know, I picked up a copy of Kerrang. I'm going to do a video on Kerrang. I'm going to pull out my 10 favourite articles from classic era Kerrang. It'll be so good because I've managed to get the whole Kerrangs, and it'll be really good to have a look at some of the funny stuff in there. Be a trip down memory lane for me, might be for some of you. Anyway, that'll be a great video when I get to that one. Anyway, and I remember that Dusty Hill had an accident. His little Derringer gun that he'd got down his cowboy boot had gone off and shot him in the foot. I mean, if that's not a rock star injury, I don't know what is. Put a like on this. Hit subscribe. Do the other stuff. Go and check out my Patreon. Go and check it all out. Do it all. PayPal tip jar. Put me in a tip. I've got a sore throat now. I've got a bad hand and a sore throat from talking for a bloody hour. Right. And I improvised some guitar. I didn't know how any of those goes. It didn't go too bad. I didn't make any mistakes, did I? It was all right. I always want to get people the guitar out, but I ain't Rick Beato, you know. I can't just pull it off like that. I think he works it out first. I don't believe anything that Rick Beato bloody put in the Spotify top 10, and he's like, isn't he? He's like that, going up and down like that. He goes, oh yes. And he goes, what's that? Oh yeah. Yes. If you want to know how to do it, then go and check out my Rick Beato bundle. I got the old bundle, you know, so go and check out the bundle and you'll be able to play. You'll be able to do all this and just hear it by ear. You'll be able to hear anything by ear, absolutely anything. Just hear it, you'll be able to play it straight off, like I can. And then I'm going to teach you to do a Holsworth lick. Ow, my arm! I've got a bad wrist and wide stretching. I keep doing it and it makes my bloody nerves go. I've got something really bad in it. I don't think I'm going to get over it. You're over the hill, losing it by rush. You're there, Andy. Come on, put a bit of money in the old pal tick jar, because I'm an old man and I'm at the end. This is the end, beautiful friend, the end, the doors, one of the great American rock bands that I can't class. It's all coming together now. I'm all pulling together at the end of the video. It all means something, but I don't know what it means. Goodbye, at the hour. See you later.